When life gives you lemons, make life take those lemons back by building a 60-ton armoured bulldozer and attacking your neighbour's cement plant. This plan might sound peculiar, but it has already been tried and tested by a certain Marvin Heemeyer. Regarded as a folk hero by some and as a domestic terrorist by others, one thing about Heemeyer remains certain: his impressive engineering skills. He meticulously crafted what can best be described as a homemade tank within the confines of his metal shed before unleashing it on the town of Granby, seeking retribution against all those whom he perceived had wronged him. Hello, and welcome to another Tank Encyclopedia narrated article. I'm your host Andrew, and today we are covering Marvin Heemeyer's armoured bulldozer, an intriguing vehicle posthumously dubbed the Killdozer, despite the fact it killed no one. A testament to one man's resolve, engineering brilliance, madness, and the destructive power of anger unchecked. Before becoming the mechanic of chaos, Heemeyer was a successful welder, owning a muffler repair shop franchise named Mountain View Muffler, based in the town of Granby, Colorado. Beneath the surface of Heemeyer's seemingly ordinary life, a web of grudges and conflicts was brewing. One of the major quarrels that fueled his rage was a zoning dispute involving his property and the Dochev family, who had intended to erect an indoor concrete batch plant on neighbouring grounds. Despite the zoning commission's advice to Cody Dochev, urging him to negotiate with Heemeyer for the purchase of his property, an agreement between them could not be reached. Nevertheless, the commission and the town mayor made the controversial decision to allow the construction of the plant to proceed in 2001, despite Heemeyer's impassioned concerns about the potential noise and air pollution. More importantly, according to Heemeyer, the plant was being built on top of the only road leading to his shop, thus blocking access to it and putting his business in jeopardy. He repeatedly petitioned the city to rezone the property to prevent the plant's construction, but his pleas, appeals, and lawsuits were all rejected on multiple occasions, and mocked by the local press. With the zoning commission declaring their decision as final, he took matters into his own hands and purchased a Komatsu D355A bulldozer with the intention of using it to create an alternative route to his muffler shop. Marvin Heemeyer also faced a litany of sewage-related issues stemming from the inadequate disposal solution he had inherited on his property. Desiring a proper sewage line, he faced exorbitant costs imposed by the sewer district, nearly twice the property's value. Rejecting both the alternatives and the injustice of shouldering the financial burden, he began pumping sewage into a nearby irrigation ditch in defiance of regulations. The resultant penalties marked a tipping point for Heemeyer, crystallizing his belief that reasonable men must sometimes do unreasonable things. After failing to sell his Komatsu D355A bulldozer, Heemeyer perceived this as a sign from God, prompting him to devise a plan of retribution against the Dochefs, Thompsons, members of the town board, zoning commission, and local press. In March of 2003, he deeded his house to a friend, sold his muffler shop property, and secured a lease for a half of the building he previously owned to finish some work. After erecting a wall and changing locks to isolate his shed, he began up-armoring and arming the bulldozer while living on site, unnoticed by other residents of Granby. Expressing astonishment at never being caught, Heemeyer left letters and audio tapes claiming that God had clouded the vision of those who had visited his shed during the 18-month period, further affirming the divine nature of his mission. The D355A bulldozer, manufactured by the Japanese construction equipment manufacturer Komatsu, first entered service in the 1970s. Designed to be cost-effective and easy to operate rather than the best in its class, this large 49-ton bulldozer was originally developed for use in overseas mines. It is powered by an efficient, low-maintenance turbocharged 410 horsepower SA6D155-4A engine, equipped with all-speed lubrication system and double filters to help it stay clean. D355A comes equipped with a 4-speed gearbox, enabling a top forward and reverse speed of 7.45 miles per hour. Thanks to its single lever control of speed and direction, cozy cabin and an array of driver assist systems, the D355A is also considered to be a comfortable and straightforward machine to drive, which might have been a determining factor back when Heemeyer originally bought it. Utilizing his welding skills and the high load capacity of his Komatsu bulldozer, Heemeyer set out to create an all-encompassing armoured cover for the protection of the vehicle and the operator inside. To create this cover, Heemeyer employed two half-inch tool steel plates sandwiching 5,000 psi quick-read concrete, effectively creating composite armour. This robust design would prove remarkably effective against small arms fire, including armour-piercing rifle ammunition and light explosives. In fact, the armour plates had to be cut open with an oxyacetylene cutting torch after multiple attempts to punch through with explosives failed. Furthermore, the armour proved to be very well set up even against more targeted attacks on the firing ports. It seems likely that nothing short of a medium caliber cannon or an anti-tank missile might have penetrated the armour of the Killdozer, although other sections were definitely more vulnerable. Armoured up, the Killdozer's height rose to 4 meters, casting an imposing silhouette. However, these modifications resulted in a weight increase to 61 tons, likely slowing down the Bulldozer and reducing its horsepower per ton to 6.7. The hydraulic track motors on the Komatsu did an excellent job of supporting the increased weight of the Dozer and provided sufficient torque to keep the tracks turning despite this extensive increase in weight. While the extra weight improved the Killdozer's demolition capabilities and helped when facing off against other heavy machinery, the strain on the engine was probably too much and it seems to have been on its way to giving up by the time the events were over. The ventilation was also probably insufficient to properly cool the engine, especially as the extra armour served to box the heat inside the motor compartment. The engine was also not run under normal conditions, but probably pushed to its limits for the duration of the 2-hour rampage, demolishing buildings and pushing out other machinery without any break or period to cool down. Heemeyer added 5 cameras to the tank dozer, providing crucial all-round visibility to the operator inside. These were safeguarded by 3-inch bulletproof plastic and were linked to 3 monitors in the driver's cabin. Air nozzles within these camera positions were hooked up to a central compressed air tank on the driver's left side, which could be used to blow away dust and debris, maintaining clear lines of sight. Furthermore, the Killdozer boasted a sophisticated air conditioning system and onboard fans to ensure Heemeyer's comfort during his harrowing endeavour. The Bulldozer was optimistically loaded with extra fuel and food, medicine, ammunition, paper towels and starter fluid, indicating that Heemeyer planned and hoped for a far longer rampage. The Bulldozer was armed with a 50 cal Barrett M82 semi-automatic rifle at the rear, though its line of fire was severely limited due to the rear-mounted digger, a 5.56 FN FNC semi-automatic rifle at the front, and a .223 Ruger Mini 14 at the right side. In addition, Heemeyer carried a .357 Magnum revolver and a 9mm Kel-Tec P11 as sidearms, which could be fired through small ports on the cabin. While this was relatively light armament given the sheer bulk of the vehicle, it was enough to take on the civilians and police that the vehicle faced, and procuring anything larger would have probably drawn unwanted attention towards the construction of the vehicle. On June 4, 2004, around 2:40 PM MST, Heemeyer greased up his Bulldozer to make it harder for people to climb on top, and then entered the cabin. Reports varied on whether he bolted or welded the entrance shut, but police later found a usable hatch. He smashed through the east wall of the shed that housed his Bulldozer and proceeded to his first target, which was, unsurprisingly, the cement plant. As Heemeyer commenced the demolition, Cody Dochev, along with a group of his workers, rushed to the scene to try to stop the Bulldozer. They began by jamming a metal rod into the tracks and firing pistol rounds at it, to no effect. Undeterred, Cody Dochev engaged the Killdozer using a front-end loader. He attempted to upend the Killdozer, but its weight proved too much, causing the loader to lift off the ground instead. Heemeyer retaliated by unloading 13 50 caliber rounds from his rear-mounted Barrett M82 into Cody's loader bucket, forcing him to disengage and flee, leaving Heemeyer to finish his demolition work. With the local police rapidly arriving, state troopers opened ineffective fire with their M4 rifles. The Killdozer charged at them in turn, forcing the officers to scatter. With the first item crossed off his list, he made his way out through the parking lot, crushing Under Sheriff Glenn Trainor's car and leaving the ruined plant behind him. With the Killdozer now loose on the highway, a frantic evacuation operation began in front of it. Under-Sheriff Glenn attempted to stop the bulldozer by climbing on top, searching for a way to gain entry or disable it. He discharged a half-dozen rounds from his handgun into the ventilation system and attempted to use flashbangs down the bulldozer's exhaust pipe, but to no avail. Trainor's next attempt was to try firing his revolver directly into the vehicle's forward porthole in an attempt to hit the driver. However, subsequent investigation revealed that these portholes, measuring 3 by 6 inches, were covered with multiple sheets of 1/4 inch thick Laxan, a clear plastic material that was bulletproof. While Glenn still clung to the top of the machine, Heemeyer made a brief detour to demolish the Mountain Parks Electric Company building and Maple Street Builder's office before turning his attention back towards his main target, the Granby Town Hall. Departing from the highway, the Killdozer circled around the hall, causing further destruction by demolishing a children's playground, with ensuing debris and chaos forcing Under-Sheriff Glenn off the machine. Taking his time to damage as much of the building as possible, the town hall was soon left unusable, with its roof bowed inward at the centre. Heemeyer next set his sights on the Liberty Savings Bank. During the assault, he deliberately targeted the corner office, where a woman who had been involved in the zoning board worked. In this destructive rampage, another casualty emerged, the town's only traffic light. Heemeyer also destroyed several trees that offended a different small business owner. The next target on the list was the Sky High News building. As he began demolishing the front, employees inside managed to escape out the back to safety. Once again, the police engaged the Killdozer with small arms fire, now resorting to using shotguns with barricade-penetrating projectiles, as well as double-aught buckshot, and even a .50 caliber rifle firing armor-piercing rounds. But the heavy armor plating again proved impervious. As Heemeyer drove across the front of the XL Energy building, his next target of revenge came into sight, Thompson & Sons Excavating, the family business of the former Granby mayor. Even though Mr. Thompson had died 3 years ago, that did not stop Heemeyer from completely demolishing Thompson's house next door, which was still being lived in by his 82-year-old widow Thelma and their 2 daughters. Heemeyer next directed his wrath towards XL Energy offices. With the XL Energy property now behind him, Heemeyer guided his armoured bulldozer across County Road 60, taking it down a dirt service road that led to the Independent Gas Company facility. There, he encountered propane tanks and power transformers, which he then attempted to ignite with .50 caliber rounds. Luckily, he failed, as his efforts were hindered due to the Ripper arm at the back of the Killdozer obstructing his line of fire. During this attack, there were a couple of courageous attempts made to halt the rampage. In a desperate attempt to stop the Killdozer, 2 wheel tractor scrapers were sent out to try and keep the Killdozer blocked on the XL Energy property, but Heemeyer was able to push one out the way, disabling it in the process. Another attempt at stopping the beast was made by Brett Howcroft, a former Grand Lake fire chief and an employee of the nearby Independent Gas Company. Armed with a 20-pound propane bottle and a hose, he rushed towards the Killdozer with a daring plan: to pump propane gas into its air intake, hoping to make the engine over-rev and blow up. Despite his brave attempt, fate was not on his side, and the bulldozer ploughed on. As Heemeyer continued his relentless rampage, the local law enforcement officers found themselves reaching a point of desperation. Recognizing they had no way of stopping the beast, Grand County Dispatch was tasked with contacting the Colorado National Guard, urgently requesting an AH-64 Apache attack helicopter, equipped with weapons capable of dealing with an armored vehicle. Despite the urgency of the situation, the National Guard only responded hours later, leaving the officers to cope alone. Heemeyer next damaged the Wrangler Tire Store, 7-Eleven, and the Copycat Printing Office. His ultimate target was the Gamble Store, owned by Casey Farrell, a former Granby Town board member. Heemeyer's bulldozer ploughed into the front of the Gamble Store, causing significant damage to its west side. A second wheel tractor scraper was then positioned to block the Killdozer's exit, but, as it turned out, there was no need. The rampage finally came to an end as the bulldozer's right track got stuck in the store basement. Meanwhile, its engine, which had been leaking hydraulic fluid and antifreeze throughout its journey, finally seized up. It was speculated that severe overheating might have caused the engine failure, despite the ventilation installed. With Heemeyer's bulldozer now immobilized inside the Gamble store, Grand County Sheriff's deputies swiftly surrounded the disabled vehicle. Just moments after it came to a halt, around 4:30 PM MST, SWAT team leader Norm Rimmer reportedly heard the sound of a single gunshot coming from inside the bulldozer. Due to the elaborate nature of Heemeyer's armoured bulldozer and the fear that it might be booby-trapped with high explosives, authorities approached the situation with extreme caution. The Grand County SWAT team was pulled back and a security perimeter was established around the bulldozer. Demolition experts prepared explosive charges, first of which was detonated at 10:42 PM, attempting to blow off one of the bulldozer's tracks to prevent it from moving, considering the possibility that Heemeyer might still be alive. Approximately 15 minutes later, the demo team attached and detonated the main breaching charge against the left side of the armoured bulldozer. However, the charge proved ineffective in penetrating the thick metal and concrete armour of the vehicle. Finally, after 12 hours of cutting with an oxyacetylene torch and a yank from a crane, the armoured hatch was breached, police finally confirming that Heemeyer was indeed deceased inside the vehicle. With the threat neutralised, the community could begin the process of healing and recovery after the shocking and devastating events of that fateful day. On April 19, 2005, the town announced plans to dismantle Heemeyer's bulldozer, dispersing its pieces to different scrapyards to prevent souvenir taking. Though no one else was killed in the incident, the modified bulldozer has come to be known as the Killdozer. It remains unclear whether this term is a reference to the 1944 short story Killdozer, or its 1974 film adaptation, or if it was independently coined. In design notes written by Heemeyer himself, it was known as the MK, or Marvin's Komatsu tank. Funnily enough, it is surprising to learn that Colorado has experienced more than one incident involving attacks carried out with heavy machinery. In 1998, a man named Tom Leask conducted a similar attack in Alma, Colorado, using a government-owned front-end loader. He caused significant destruction to the town's post office, town hall, fire department, and water department before being apprehended by authorities.